this segment, we'll look into how to utilize copper for Lake Ontario fishing. Power Pro is nice and thin and will allow you to put quite a bit of backing on without taking up too much space on your reel. Tie the Power Pro backing onto your spool utilizing your favorite knot. I tend to use just a regular overhand knot with about 3 knots in it. Okay, now we need to get the 150 yards of Power Pro onto the reel. In this case, we're using a motorized reel spooler, but the same could be done by just manually cranking on the reel. They said 150 yards should fit with 500 feet of copper, so.
Why don't you put 600 on there, but just put 50 yards on here? You can't get 600 on these.
When loading the line onto the reel, ensure that the line is kept tight at all times. The last thing you want is for the line to get loose and bird nest on you. Okay, now it's time to tie our Power Pro backing to our copper line. To do this, we're going to utilize an Albright knot. Here you can see the picture giving directions of how to tie the Albright knot. Alright, now that we have the copper to Power Pro knot, it's time to get the copper onto the reel. So to do this, at first, slowly reel the copper into the reel because you want to get that copper knot through the guide and onto the reel a couple wraps before you start going fast. Once you do that, you can start at full speed to get that copper on. It's going to take a while because there's quite a bit of copper to put on there, and the copper spool is pretty big, so it's going to turn real fast. So it's a good idea to wear some gloves for this step. The Dakota 800 reel that I'm using will fit about 500 feet of copper, including the backing that we had just put on. Any more than that, and what will happen is the leader you tie on with the copper, the knot there will actually end up getting stuck when it reels in. It'll get stuck on the guide, it'll get stuck in the guide bar, and that's the last thing you want to do when you're fighting a big fish, because then you won't be able to reel in anymore, and you'll end up either going hand over hand, or the fish will end up breaking you off. So it's important to be careful when you're putting that copper on to leave a little extra room for the 15 to 20 feet of leader material that you're going to put on in the end. You don't want it to get too tight, and you don't want it to end up getting stuck. Now you can feel free not to fill the spool. If you only want to put 200 feet of copper, 300 feet of copper on, you can feel free to do that. It doesn't matter if the reel is actually filled or not. You just don't want to overfill it. The 45-pound test copper most of us use sinks at about 22 feet for every 100 feet of copper line that you let out. So if you let out 100 feet of copper line, it'll sink down to about 22 foot below the water line. If you let out 200 feet, it'll sink to 44 feet. 300 feet of copper will sink to 66 feet. 400 feet will sink to 88 feet. And 500 feet will sink to just over 100 feet of depth. So that's good to know. In the summer, fishing most places on Lake Ontario or any of the Great Lakes, you're really going to want to get down deep. So you're going to want to make sure you have that 500 feet of copper on there. In the springtime, you might be able to get away with 200 feet, 300 feet. But for the most part, the nice thing about the 500 feet is it's always flexible. You don't need to let it all out. You can let out only half of it if you want and have it sink down to 50 feet if you're targeting steelhead, maybe early spring brown trout, early spring kings. It's more flexible, so I always recommend going with at least 500 feet of copper. Some people use different reels and get 600 feet on and really get that lure down, below that 120 foot mark. I haven't really seen the need for that. There are days where I do wish I had a little bit of extra copper on there, but I can always attach a weight if I want to, rather than putting another 100 feet of copper on. Alright, now let's watch how to tie the Albright knot from the copper to the leader, and we'll do that live for you right now. Okay, so form your loop in your copper just by bending the copper over itself and pass your leader material through. Now you're going to wrap around the copper at least 5 to 7 times. You can do as many times as you want, but 5 to 7 seems to usually be plenty. Once you get those 5 to 7 wraps through, you're going to push those coils together, make sure that they're nice and tight, and then you're going to take your leader material and take the very tip of that leader material and pass it through that copper loop, just like such. Once you have that material through and all put together, pull tight, make sure the knot is nice and tight and snug and everything, make sure it's not going to pull out, and you're good to go.
Good morning, it's June 15th. It's another beautiful day out here in Lake Ontario. Weather's pretty calm, almost no waves at all. We're going to end up going out and starting in a little bit shallower today. I looked at the temperature map. Temperature map was showing a little bit of a temperature break, probably 80 foot of water. So we're going to start in that like 60 to 80 foot of water. And we're just going to keep trolling north until we find some fish. We start marking them on the fish finder. That'll give us a sign that we're over some active fish, turn around, start hitting them. If we don't mark any in the fish finder, we're just going to keep going. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometime. So let's go fishing. Alright, so we're going to let the copper out. This is a 500 copper. I'm probably only going to let it out about 400 feet. I like to use the Dodger fly on the copper. It gives it a little bit more pull when I'm letting it out. I seem to get less tangles, but some people do run it with spoons. I personally prefer Dodger fly. So we're going to let it out. The key when you're letting out the copper is to let it out straight down the middle and not get it into any of your lines. So you want to let it out real slow. Keep that Dodger on the top of the water. Get through your backing. And then you gotta get that copper knot out through the eyes there. And that can be tough. So you just give it a little pull, a little wiggle. Another nice thing about using the Dodger, it pulls a little stronger so you can get the copper out. Alright, and once you have the copper out, it goes pretty easy. And for the first, I don't know, 50 feet or so, you're going to have to pull it out by hand. But once you get enough weight in the water, it'll actually start pulling it out on its own.
Yeah, I just got back in 130 tray. Keep going in and out and pick them up on the way.
Alright, the key here is to let it out slow. You should really never go much faster than what you're seeing right here. And then every minute or so, I'll just put my thumb on it and stop it for about 10 seconds. Let it get tight, straighten itself out. And I'm going to let this out until this one has a line counter so I can see how far out it went. I'm going to let it out 430 feet. That should be about 400 feet of copper and a little extra for the leader in the front and a little extra for the part that's going to be above the water attached to the flinger. You'll find the more copper you let out, the more of a tendency it has to want to really scream out and really, let out the copper real fast. So you got to keep your thumb on the spool and slow it down a little bit. If you let it out too fast, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to tangle with itself, or if you're in shallow enough, it's actually going to drop too fast and you might even catch bottom. When you're letting this out, anytime you're letting the copper out down the middle, do not turn the boat. Keep that boat straight until you have the copper done. I know it could be a pain because it takes a while, but the last thing you want to do is turn the boat and end up getting your copper on one of your dipsy lines and it makes a mess. The dipsy ends up winding around the copper and it'll take you hours to untangle it. I've got quite a bit of copper out. If you watch, if I take my thumb off, it starts to really freeze cool. You don't want to do that. You don't want to let it out that fast. Not to mention, it can end up bird's nesting your reel with the copper, and it's a real pain to get that bird's nest out. So just nice and slow. We're almost there. About 4:30. So now I'm going to bring it over to the side, and I have to get it out on my otter boat that's out there. You can see the otter boat. It's way out to the side, and that'll get the copper out of my main line. That gets it away from the boat, and you know it helps with boat noise. The fish may be a little timid. It'll help with that. Plus, it keeps it out of all your other lines. So there's two ways to do it. It's calm today, but if it wasn't calm, a lot of times I'll use a rubber band. And I'll just half hitch that rubber band around the copper or the backing, depending on how much copper you have out. Just half hitch it in there like that. And then what you'll do is you'll take your release. This is just, you know, a normal release you can buy, heavy duty. And you'll take that rubber band, you'll put it all the way down in your release, because you don't want the release to release, you actually want the rubber band to break when the fish hits. But because it's so calm out today, I'm not going to use the rubber band. So in this case, all I'm going to do is, you see the two black grippers, like a clothespin, I'm going to put that copper pretty deep into that. That way it's nice and tight in there. It's going to take a fish to hit it as opposed to a wave or a bump, you know, or something. Okay, then I'm going to pull in my planer line. This is very important to have this rope attached to your planer. That way I don't have to go up front, you know, in rough seas. I can just pull that line right to me. Alright, so here's the planer board line. In my case, all it is weed whacker line. And all you're going to do is snap that release right in there like that. Now you're just going to slowly, the more line you let out, that clip is going to slide down your planer board line. So you just want to keep letting the line out until it's probably 3/4 of the way to your otter boat. See it sliding down there. Alright, and then you just gotta put the rod in the rod holder. Make sure that your drag is set. You want your drag set to the drag you're gonna fight the fish at. Don't make it loose, don't make it too heavy. Whatever you're gonna fight the fish at, just leave it right there. That way when the fish hits, you're all ready to go. And there you go, that's all it is. Copper. We're under copper going.